Ideation is important in scaling your business because you need to constantly be thinking of ways to scale and how to make your scaling strategy come alive. There's a few ways you can do this. One way is brainstorming. And that means when you collaborate with other people in your organization or other people who you respect and admire, who may already have been successful in your industry or in business in general, and get their feedback on specifics or specific ways that you can transform processes or different parts of your operations to grow and scale. Another tip for ideation is to make ideation a part of your day-to-day life. I ideate constantly, even outside of creating ideas to scale creative analytics. I'm constantly looking for ideas of how to make money or how to take a process or an experience that I'm having in some other industry or just in my day-to-day, how I could make it better and potentially make money by doing something better than someone who's established in an industry. And I'm suggesting that at the very least you do that for your business. So while you're driving around in your car and you're having a really good customer service experience, perhaps consider how you can take that experience and apply some features of it to your own business. I can give you an example. Every single time I go through the Chick-fil-A drive-thru, I'm thinking of how can I automate a really streamlined fast food pickup operation into my service-based business. And I'm always thinking of what are the steps to the founder of Chick-fil-A or whoever he hired to establish the operations and operational processes to streamline that organization and make it run like a well-oiled machine where every single person who works in the organization knows exactly what they need to do, when and how, and exactly what culture and experience they're trying to create. And that takes a lot of time and effort, right? So another example is I was recently at my gym and I saw that the customer service reps had a unique title. Their job title that they had on their badges was not customer service representative. It was this really cool job title that they had come up with that I thought really sounded more aligned with my company's culture and the experience I'm trying to create. So I adopted that. I changed the job titles for our customer service representatives to this other title that I found. And that's an example of using or making ideation a part of your day-to-day life where you're constantly looking for areas of improvement and opportunity in your organization that could result in you scaling and growing, right? Once you make ideation a part of your day-to-day life, then I encourage you to get your leaders in your organization to do the same. Don't let them get in the habit of complaining about something not working or complaining about a process not being optimized. If it's within their purview, if it's within their division or department, then they should be looking for ways to improve it, right? They should always be looking at if there's a problem or if there's some trend in negative customer feedback or something like that, or a trend in negative employee feedback about how something is being operated or run or process is being driven, then they should first, and you, if it's part of what you're managing within your operations of your company, then you should be looking at first of all, why is this happening? What's the problem? What's the experience? What do we want it to be? What would be the ideal process or experience that we want to create? And then let's compare where we're at why there's a problem in the first place to where we want to be, and then let's ideate and brainstorm ways that we can change that process or experience and make it one that will encourage more customers to buy from us, more happy customers, more people to be aware of who we are and what we do so that they come into the fold as customers. And that's, again, how you're scaling the operation. Another thing to consider in terms of scaling, right, when you're asking your leadership to ideate on a day-to-day basis, let's say that you have bottlenecks in your processes that are causing a lot of manual work. Then you should charge your leadership within that department to find ways that they can streamline those processes, reduce the manual work, and automate those processes. Because there's two ways to solve manual work. Either you hire more people, which costs more money and cuts into your profit margin, or you automate, which means that you don't have to hire as many more people. You have happier employees because they're not bogged down by so much work, and then everybody's happy and you're scaling. Acquisition is my second tip. Well, there's two ways that you can generally scale in terms of acquisition or in terms of increasing sales. So you can scale with a combination of these two things with some nuances about each that I'll get into, but you can either scale with a combination of these two things or with just focusing on one. So one is by driving more revenue from your current customers. That means getting your current customers to become repeat customers. And ideally, one of the nuances here is to get them to buy not only more from you, but to buy at a bigger cost to them or a bigger investment, therefore increasing value per customer, your lifetime value per customer, or the annual lifetime value, or the annual value that you're driving per customer. So that means, how much money are you making per customer per year on average? And if you can drive that number up, right, then that is one way that you can scale by generating more revenue from your existing customer base. And the second way is by acquiring more customers. Now, when you're acquiring more customers, you want to consider two things, especially if you're acquiring these customers online in some way. So you want to consider your cost per acquisition, or your cost per lead, or your cost per ad. Those are oftentimes used interchangeably, although they do have different formulas and they're not exactly the same thing. But that is where you are learning. That's identifying what the cost is to you to basically get a new customer from your digital advertising efforts. So if you are spending money to increase the traffic on your website through ads, or you are spending money to generate more leads, whether you're buying leads or whether you're creating lead generation systems that cost money to implement and maintain, whether you are paying for ad space on some other platform in order for you to acquire more customers, right? You need to know what that cost is. If you are spending more money or cutting heavily into your profit margin by what you're spending to acquire those customers, and it doesn't quite add up with what you're making back from them, then that is not a scalable situation. So you want to consider what those costs are and try to drive them down, right? So another thing to consider acquiring new customers is, who is your ideal customer? You need to be very clear on who your ideal customer is. And that's the customer that's most likely to buy from you on a repeat basis. Okay? So what does that customer look like? Where do they spend their time? How can you drive those costs down? That is one way to drive scale with acquiring new customers. So again, you can scale by a combination of those two things, by increasing the revenue you're getting from existing customers and driving new customers through customer acquisition. The cheapest way always for your organization is to get existing customers to buy from you, because you've already acquired them. So you already have a connection with them and you're able to communicate with them directly, usually at a very, very, very low cost to you through email marketing or through text messaging or something like that, as opposed to having to, drive impressions using some other platform like Facebook ads or Google PPC or something like that, where you don't really have control over how many impressions you're driving or what the cost is per lead. Tip number 3 is automation. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I would say that this is part of part 2, because if you don't have those foundational steps, automation is really when you're ready to really ramp up scale. And there's some different considerations that I want to talk to you about in terms of automation that really do work together, because there's kind of like, it's almost like a factory line. Think about manufacturing cars, okay? Manufacturing Toyotas on the factory line, right? Now, let's take this visualization and let's now use scaling your product or service business instead. The first step, right, is that you want to get more customers or you want to drive more leads. And those leads could be from your existing customer base as well. They don't have to be people who've never heard of your organization. They could be people who you've already talked to on the phone or who you've already sent a sample to, what depends on your business. But that first step is that lead generation. And what you want to do is you want to automate that lead generation. You want to automate a repeatable, scalable system for bringing in more traffic, bringing in more prospects, bringing in more awareness for your company's products or services, as well as bringing in more hand raises from your existing customers to say, hey, oh, I didn't know you did that, or I didn't know you sold that as well, or hey, this is great. I love this product I bought from your product line. Oh, I should buy this other product from your product line. That's that lead generation, and that needs to be heavily automated if you want to scale, because scaling means that it's happening at all times. It's got a life of its own, right? So again, we're back on the factory floor. This is when we're building that frame, right, for your Toyota. That frame is, let's say, lead generation. And you need to automate that process. It needs to be a scalable, repeatable system of bringing in more hand raises of, I'm interested in your product or service. The second part of the factory line is going to be sales. So you've got the marketing engine and that lead generation system that you've created, building that frame for that Toyota. And now you need to make sure that there are people in your organization available to talk to all of those hand raisers. Now, the hand raisers in the case of, let's say, an e-commerce company is going to be a little bit different, because when you get someone coming in to an e-commerce platform, that's generally, that first step is going to be they buy your product. So they go onto your website and they buy your product. So that sales is not really going to be a part of a product-based business as much as it's going to be part of a service-based business. But let's say you have a service-based business, then you need to have people, communicators, who can talk to all those hand raisers. Let's say you have 1,000 hand raisers and you have one salesperson. If you have one salesperson who has talked to 1,000 people in a short period of time, they're not going to be able to do it. And they're sure as hell, if they attempt to do it, not going to be successful. It's just too many people that they have to deal with. So you have to scale up your sales process, and that has to be automated. You can automate it and you can hire more people. But either way, automation is going to play a part in this, because the people who are going to have to reach out to these people are going to need some way to streamline their communications and tracking the status of those communications and conversations. Same would go for if you are sending products out, right? You need to have someone who's being able to handle how many orders you have coming in. So I hope these tips were really helpful. I hope you enjoyed our 2-part series on how to scale your business. And if you have any questions, make sure that you leave a comment. But more importantly, please let us know in the comments what you thought about it, what was the most impactful tip or tips that you heard, and if there's anything you want us to talk about around this topic in the future. Do you need help growing your business online? Click the link in the description to book a free strategy session with one of our growth experts today.